guys, welcome in! Today, we're going to be doing a story review for the newest Wuthering Waves 2.4 story that we just finished the second half of last week and had lots of discussions about it and lots of talks about it, and I've also had lots of time to think about it, and yeah, story reviews. I think this is my first Wuthering Waves story review, actually, since I started doing them, so really excited to do this. I will try to be concise with my thoughts and not yap for too long, but yeah, I've started doing some story reviews for the games that I do play because story is the thing that I pay the most attention to and enjoy the most in the gacha games I like. So I thought it would be fun to, be able to discuss good things, bad things about all the stories that we play. And yeah, I will preface this though, I honestly don't really have many bad things. I don't have like any bad things to say about the 2.4 story. So this will be a glazing max video to be honest, but but it'll still be fun to talk about it. So yeah, anyways, if you guys, before I begin, if you guys enjoy, please make sure to smash like, subscribe. I'd super appreciate it. Comment down below, letting me know your guys' thoughts about everything. If you agree, disagree with some of my points, I would love to hear it. And also feel free to join the Discord server if you want to come chat, hang out, and have a good time. And apart from that, let's just get right into it. Here we go. I have a list of things that we are going to go through today with regards to the story. My list is as follows. We're going to go through the plot, basic thoughts on the plot, my basic thoughts on the pacing and the writing, and then, some stuff about the first half, second half split, cutscenes, visuals, characters, the gameplay, and then a little bit about the music, voice acting, and just general overall feelings about everything. So yeah, that is the plan, and let's just get right into it then. So firstly, the plot of the story in 2.4. Honestly, I really liked it. I really liked the plot. I do think the plot for me wasn't as emotional as 2.2. I do think 2.2 definitely left a very it was very, very impactful on me emotionally, but 2.4 as a whole, it was really, really entertaining. It was, okay, I guess I can't really talk about the parts separately from the way they presented the plot, but just in general, the way, like the story itself with the progressing the main storyline of Wuthering Waves, I feel like 2.4 is one of the climaxes, but also it serves as both a climax to some of the Resonators stuff and all of the 2.0 story so far, while also serving as a very, very solid introduction to the next arc of the story as a whole, because we, get to kind of see a culmination of everything that's been going on in Resonators as of right now. And then also we finally learned lots of stuff about, the main actual motivations for the Fleurdelys members, for what they're trying to accomplish. We don't know, the full extent of things, but we definitely got to learn a lot more about Cristoforo and kind of his motivations. And he was the main villain, of course, so it makes sense. And then it just gave us some more clarity. It gave us more clarity on the general landscape of what is going on with the Black Tide, or is it Dark Tide? Sorry, it's like the tide that is dark. I think it was very well done. The pacing itself was fantastic. I think genuinely the pacing and writing of 2.4 is my favorite one so far of all of the wuwa story. Not just because of the story itself, but also because I really, really enjoyed how they did it in a non-linear narrative. The narrative style was really, really creative and really impressive. They had, the flashbacks in which, while we're playing the story, we honestly it's really confusing because they're giving us kind of slices of what is happening here and there with no context. And so it is very confusing, but I like it a lot because it added a lot of mystery, right? It felt like I was actually reading a book in the same way where sometimes, mystery books, they give you the air of mystery without fully explaining everything. So then when you finally get to the conclusion in the second half of, the story, it all slots together like puzzle pieces, and it's so satisfying. And it was so satisfying and really, really well executed. So I genuinely think the writing in this patch was the best writing that we've gotten so far. And yes, that also includes the really, really emotional 2.2. I was a huge fan of 2.2, but this one, I just loved how creative they were with the storytelling in that sense. Yeah, I also think that part of that also it was contributed to by them splitting the story into first half, second half. I actually, after playing the first half, right, I was so hyped. Firstly, it made me really excited for the second half of the patch, and it also gave me time to really ruminate and absorb what had happened and theorize on what could possibly be happening after the first half of the story. So I think that was a really, really effective method for them to have done, and I really hope that they actually continue doing that in the future as well, because it's just so nice, because usually, you know, we get all of the story in the first half, everyone plays it in the first 2 weeks, and then you're just waiting there for the next 5 weeks with nothing, and then, you know, the second half of the patches are usually a bit drier unless they have a companion story, which they also have been not doing as much lately. But having everyone super excited to play like the second half of the main story, since that is what people are the most hyped for, was really, really nice, because then I felt like everyone as a community was just super excited for not just the first half, but, you know, the second phase as well. And I think it also worked really well too, because obviously the second half was a bit more focused on Lupa personally, but I think she was amazingly written and well done, so I have no complaints. And one last thing about the first half, second half that I really liked as well was, for me, one of the things I've always said about Wuwa story is that I honestly wish it was a bit longer. Because I really like the build up, okay? I really like it when stories build up and give you a little bit of time to have that, I guess, slow burn, you know? And I do feel like 2.0 onwards, amazing story, but some of them have been really fast. And, you know, I'm sure there will be people who disagree with me on this, but I feel like if they maybe just added an extra, you know, half hour to an hour to some of the previous patches and gave us a bit more time to just kind of sit and absorb everything, it would have been really, for me, it would have been like the perfect amount of story where I get to have that slow burn while not having it be actually, you know, too much and also just needless yapping. So I think them splitting the story in half, if you look at how long the story is, right? I think it is actually longer. Please correct me if I'm wrong. At least it feels longer. Them splitting it in half like this gives them the opportunity to make the story a bit longer while still not leaving it super overwhelming for people who might not like story that is as long. And it also gives them a bit more time to really develop and build on characters, and so, you know, whether it's the main characters or side characters, but just overall just gives them a bit more time, a bit more flexibility with being able to write the story without making it too draggy. So I really like the first half, second half, and I do hope that they continue with it in the future if they execute it as well as they did in 2.4. So the cutscenes and visuals, guys. The cutscenes and visuals were so amazing. Oh my god, they were so good. They were beautiful. Honestly, I don't really have much to say about this. The new region, the intro to the region in the first half was so cool. When you're flying and then you go into the cutscene of flying, and then it loads as you're flying, and then the clouds spread, and then you see Septimont appearing in the distance. Dude, that was so cool. It blew my mind. I was literally having performance issues, but I still was blown away even with the performance issues, because it was just such a cool concept and way of introducing the new region, rather than just having us, you know, just either teleport there or just, you know, run there ourselves. So I thought that was super fun. The cutscenes, of course, were really good. I have no complaints there. The visual storytelling in, you know, Wuwa 2.0 onwards has just been fantastic. I honestly don't have too much to say. It was just really beautiful. I also really liked the book. You know how this time around, because it was a bit more of a book / storyline type of concept, they also showed us the Fleurdelys book, and then we got to see the branching storylines as well. I really liked that too, because it added mystery, confused us, while still gave us a bit of, it was a visual aid to help us kind of understand what was going on, or piece together what was going on with all of the branching storylines, right? Rather than them actually, you know, telling us and trying to explain it through dialogue, they just gave us a book. They gave us a book with visual aid that very clearly laid out, okay, these are the different paths that are kind of being treaded down at the moment. And then, so, you know, just it made a lot of sense. It was very easy to understand once we got all of the pieces of the puzzle, and it was fantastic, super smart. And I really like the way Kuro Games has been constantly seemingly trying to evolve the ways that they tell the story, right? They actually showed us a little bit of a teaser with this book in 2.3 with the Chiokona interlude event quest, and they took it to, they adapted it properly for the story they were trying to tell in 2.4, and it was great. It was great. I loved it. It felt like an anime and at the same time playing. Yeah, exactly. Right? It felt like we were watching an actual story because of how amazing the visuals were, and also with the, like I said, the way that they kind of told the story through a non-linear narrative. So fantastic. I talk about some of the characters too. The characters, very well done. In general, I'll just go down the list. I'll go down the list. Cartethiya, I think that Cartethiya's arc, I honestly, it's like kind of concluded, but at the same time, Cartethiya is very clearly still a character that's very relevant in Resonators, so I don't think this is the last we've seen of Cartethiya. I'm sure she's also going to be super relevant in some of the upcoming story as well. I think she was super well done. And Lupa as well, of course. Lupa was the star of the show. I loved Lupa's character arc. I loved how they actually told Lupa's story alongside Mia's. And because Mia and Lupa are, they're basically kind of serving as parallels, right? They are both in very similar situations with their role and power, just between two different eras. But then we got to see how Lupa's story and her journey was able to be changed through being able to meet her friends and getting rizzed up by Rover, of course. Well, it's not Wuthering Waves or nothing. No, that's a joke. No, but with her companions, right? We got to see her interact with Cartethiya. We saw Cartethiya save her in the alternate, in the other Sonorosphere in reality, I guess. And then we also saw her be able to kind of grow and get some strength from with Rover as well, with Rover helping her go become the protagonist in the story. And it was really thoughtful and well done, especially when you had the boss fight at the end where, basically it was kind of like a 1v1 between Lupa and Mia, and it was just a very fitting end. Lupa was able to kind of overcome the Threnodian's whispers when Mia wasn't, and she was able to help Mia get some peace at long last after everything through the power of friendship. And then Buling was also pretty interesting, though she only had like a few minutes of screen time. I think Buling's gonna be a lot more relevant later, but she was interesting for sure, and she kind of just gave us the mirror plot device and then said, yeah, yeet. But I'm excited to see her role in the upcoming story, especially since they teased it at the end. For Lova, I think this patch gave us honestly the most information about Fleurdelys that we have had thus far. To me, so far, Fleurdelys has been a very mysterious character. She's been very mysterious. We don't really know her motivations. I've always kind of seen her as more of a spectator slash, puppeteer, obviously. Very literal, imagery from that in 1.x, where she has her own motivations and she's kind of using both the Fleurdelys and the Rover side, like the good and bad sides, for her own motivations. And we don't really know what those motivations are still. We don't have enough context. I'm sure we'll get more context in 2.5, but I really liked seeing her interactions with Cristoforo this patch, actually. I know we got to interact with her at the beginning of 2.4, but honestly, first half for Lova still kind of acted the same as how she's acted in every other time we've met her thus far, in my opinion. She's just been very cryptic, kind of, very sly, alluding to trying to manipulate us, but then also, not really. She's just been very cryptic, thus far. But then seeing her in the second half of 2.4, where her interactions with Cristoforo, she acted honestly a lot like a very jaded colleague. She was acting like Cristoforo was one of her coworkers that she found really annoying and was honestly just really done with. So it was really funny, but also high-key, to me, gave a lot of depth to her character, because I think that's the most honest we have seen for Lova thus far, in my opinion. So I'm very, very intrigued to see more about her. I think they're doing a good job at kind of teasing her personality, motivations, and yeah, 2.5 will definitely show us more of that. Cristoforo, I love to call him Cristofofo, honestly is an amazing villain. He's an amazing villain because he is so unlikable, while at the same time, I actually really like everything that Cristoforo says in terms of the kind of ideas and philosophies he brings up. Obviously, I don't agree with his methods. Okay, I don't agree with, you know, forcing people into a endless cycle to farm their negative energy and pain and suffering. Okay, let me get that straight up. He is, I would say, definitely like quite morally bad rather than morally gray. That's what makes an interesting villain, right? When you have a character who is at the end of the day a terrible individual, which he is. He is a terrible individual, has done terrible things. He experimented on Mia for like 20 plus years. Like, bruh, like leave her dead body alone. Okay, bro was fucked up and not in the fun way. Okay, but you can still relate to him in certain aspects, and you still find him interesting. He's not completely just. He is not a oh, what's the term? One-dimensional? No, there's a specific noun for it. Okay, this is gonna bother me. Give me a second. Cookie cutter, tropey. That's one. That's the one. Sorry, trope. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Yeah, Cristoforo. He's not just a trope, you know. And I think that is very important in a villain. And I also think it was nice this patch too, because now that we actually get to meet Cristoforo and learn more about him, we also have a figure, okay? We finally have a person of interest to oppose. Because I think up until now, the Fractsidus has existed as a very vague organization, vague motivations. Sure, we know that there's bad forces in the world, but now that we have a face to directly like oppose and combat against, I think that adds a lot of investment to the story, for me at least, as a reader, because now I have someone to hate. You know, I have a face to put to the hatred that I want to the evil force that is trying to do all of these terrible things. And then on top of the fact that he is very interesting to watch and also interact with, it just adds to making me more and more invested in the plot as a whole. So yeah, it feels like he makes sense sometimes, and I hate that. Exactly, right? Exactly. But that's what makes him so interesting. Because if he's just a trope, if he's just like a pure evil individual, then it's like, okay, f this guy, who cares, right? But the fact that he is so evil, yet you can still understand what he's saying, and also kind of like, you know, relate in certain ways, and what he's saying makes sense, it aggravates you even more, because it's a gray, right? Humans are grays. There is no person who is just black or white in terms of their morals. So then, you know, his morals are obviously very black in terms of like the evil side. But, you know, humans at the end of the day have many different reasons for the things that they do. So it's nice to see that the villains as well also have that kind of, those different layers to them. You know, Shrek voice. They're like an onion. They're like an onion, guys. So I am very excited to see where Cristoforo's character is going to go in the future as well. And yeah, and I guess like the last one I have on my list right now is also like Julia too, right? Julia, the bitch who was used to the ex-head of Lupa's house or whatnot. She actually ended up being a lot less of a significant character than I expected. She ended up just being a pawn, which, you know, makes sense in the end, because we kind of knew she was a pawn from the beginning. Like, side characters like that I think were pretty decently written, because, you know, from Julia's perspective, it kind of seemed like she thought she was doing the right thing, even though, you know, I think she's kind of stupid, you know, stupid bitch, honestly. But overall, you know, they did a good job at giving all of the side characters and main characters different layers of depth that were both kind of, they were nuanced, right? There was a lot of nuance to everyone's motivations and their roles in the story. So doing a really, really good job at building that. Because I think this is the patch where that has been the most consistent as a whole, right? Some of the previous patches, they did focus super hard on like one character specifically, and then a lot of the other side characters were just a bit they're just kind of there. So they're doing a very good job at just generally improving. And Augusta and Yuno, obviously, they showed up for a little bit. They were mostly just there for a tease, but I'm fine with that. I'm fine if they just want to tease, you know, some of the upcoming characters, and then later they can slowly let us get to know them better. I do hope that maybe we can get to know them, Augusta and Yuno, more in 2.5, if there is any main story at all, because I do like it when characters appear for more than just their patch. Which I think Cartethiya has done a pretty good job of that so far in Renacita, but I just hope that other characters also will be able to have some of that as well. Have a bit more plot relevance outside of the individual patch that they're being promoted in. Because to me, that makes a much better, I guess, like world building and character building, since I have more time to get to know them. And it feels like they have more of a life outside of just the plot of the story in the game. To bring that to the next point is I actually wanted to talk about how I also really liked how they kind of kept the, I guess, quote unquote, Wuthering Wives to a minimum, if that makes sense. I don't personally mind the Wuthering Wives too much, but I really, really enjoyed how they allowed Cartethiya and Lupa to grow outside of their relationship with Rover. I understand not every, like, the whole Wuthering Wives thing is a huge joke, okay? Not every character, you know, is actually like dating Rover or whatnot. If anything, there's only like a few that you would argue could be like, you know, argued for that. But at the end of the day, I think all of the writing thus far in wuwa has been very centric around Rover, which is understandable. They're the main character. What I really wanted was to see the characters develop outside of their relationship with Rover as well. So being able to see Cartethiya and Lupa have that entire arc where they were, you know, giving each other strength. You know, Cartethiya was able to finally be able to kind of move past her past and give someone else strength, right? Because Cartethiya got strength from us before, and now she is able to carry that on and give it to Lupa as well. And the thing, it just made me feel so happy because I was able to see the characters interact outside of us as an MC, our relationship as an MC, and to me that gave the characters a lot of depth because it made them feel a lot more real and a lot more immersive, since, you know, at the end of the day, in reality, people are going to have so many relationships outside of, you know, their own relationship with you too, right? So it just helped, for me, it helped the world building a lot and the character building too, to see them, to make them feel more real in that sense. It made them feel a lot more real because of the fact that they had these relationships with someone else in Resonators as well. That was not just, you know, the Rover. So obviously Rover still had a very pivotal role and very important role. And I just think that's the thing, right? I think this is like a nice balance because I know there's a lot of people who love the fact that Rover is constantly there, constantly like the main character, which is totally okay. But it's just nice, you know, it's nice to have like a balance, a bit of both, right? So then you have, you know, the Rovers being super cool, helping out everyone, while also being able to really feel that the world is alive, feel that the characters are alive. So I loved that. And also another thing is I think it was also very smart of them to put some more of the fan servicey stuff at the end after the story finished. You know how we can kind of go on a little date with the Lupa and I guess Cartethiya too, though Cartethiyas was a bit more depressing. And yeah, so I think that the being able to put some of that fan service stuff at the end, kind of like how they did in Cantabella's quest, where it was mainly just, you know, story, and then at the end they give us you know, they give us our cake and let us eat it too. So I think that was super smart because then it doesn't feel shoehorned into the main plot while still being able to satisfy us as players. You know, I'm a fan and I'm being serviced, so W. And also was very good too for teasing. The amount of side quests that they had at the end too, I know you can also talk to Bulang at the end, and that also teases stuff, was super smart. But yeah, I want more characters with interpersonal relationships being shown on screen. Agree. So yeah, hopefully they will keep that up for the upcoming patches as well. Because guys, seeing Iyuno and Augusta's relationship later, because we're definitely going to see that, is going to be so cool. And I think it would be super, you know, it would feel so much more real if we get to see them and how they function, just like, you know, how they've existed thus far, since they clearly have a very strong relationship in Septimont. And, you know, I'm sure we're going to build a relationship with them as Rover as well. But it would also just be so sick to see how they function. Yeah, just like how, for us to come in, you know, get to know them, but also get to see them and who they are, you know, before we have even come into the picture. So, and yeah, like I know some people were saying how this quest was a little bit of a Lupa companion quest. I mean, I personally didn't really think that too much because at the end of the day, for me, what defines a companion quest is whether or not the plot itself is relevant to the main story. I think the plot was super relevant to the main storyline of Wuthering Waves. So then sure, we focused a lot on Lupa, but I have no issue with that because Lupa's story was very deeply intertwined with the main story, right? So there's nothing wrong with focusing more on a separate character outside of the MC because, you know, different people have different roles in the plot, and Lupa's role was as a function. So being able to follow her and get to know her and get to also learn the story through her eyes as well was really nice. And I also feel like Lupa as well. I really like the way they treated Rover this patch, because on top of the fact that, you know, we got to see some more interpersonal relationships outside of the MC, we also got to see Rover develop too. We got to see a different side of Rover. I remember this one specific moment. This one specific moment when we're still unsure about whether or not we should trust Lupa. We see Rover hesitate. We see Rover really like contemplate, like, okay, I want to trust her, but I don't, you know? I don't trust her yet. There's too many factors at play. There's too many things that lead me to believe that she could, you know, be involved with whatever bad things are going on, that I will be here to support her, but I will still keep an eye on her, you know? I will still be suspicious. And to me, that actually added a lot of depth to Rover, because that is a very realistic response. I don't know what else to say, right? You have, you know, I feel like it would be unrealistic if he just automatically, you know, started trusting her and started being like, okay, let me help you, you know, let me help you, let me help you get through this. You know, so sure there's sus things going on, but I still trust you. But no, he didn't trust her. He didn't fully trust her. And I really liked that, because then now Rover also is starting to become more of a character to me as well. So I'm really enjoying that too. Okay, the gameplay as per usual was great. The rail grinding at the beginning was fun. I do think the rail grinding went on a little bit long, personally, especially because it was just at the beginning, like right at the beginning, I mean. So maybe that could have been a little bit shorter, but not a big deal. Not a big deal at all, since the rest of the story was very good. There was the tournament arc. I do think my tournament arc was probably a little bit ruined by the fact that I was lagging the entire time, but dude, it was still pretty cool. And it was not too drawn out, so I enjoyed that. And then the puzzles as well. The puzzles, there were some hand-holdy, you know, parts of the game, puzzles, things like that, like for example when we're opening the gates. But again, it wasn't too long. And during the gate part specifically, I thought it was pretty cool how the map changed. The map was changing while we were opening the gates, so you know, not the end of the world. And also the boss fight. I personally found the boss fight really fun. I love it whenever they do the QTE in the boss fights. I did see some people complaining about how the boss fight itself to them was not as cool, because the boss was basically just a variation of a previous boss, like Morning Agekk, I think. I didn't really notice, to be honest, because I was too lost in the story. I was lost in the sauce for the story. But I thought it was fun. But yeah, no, I do think if they did make a completely brand new boss, obviously it would have added to the immersion there. But, you know, I'm not too bothered by it personally. Yeah, and the fact that it looked ugly and goofy, at first I thought it was like kind of silly that they did that to make it look kind of goofy and like demented. But after thinking about it, the fact that the boss was technically a Mia that was experimented on by the Fraxis for 20 plus years, I was like, okay, I guess it makes sense that, you know, that the body might be a bit demented looking and not look super pretty or anything like that. So yeah, anyways, that's my lore explanation for that. But, and also, yeah, the BGM. I guess that's the next point. That's the next point for us to go to, was the BGM was insane. Dude, the background music, through like the battle music, you know, the cutscene music, even just the overworld music, the ambient music, was so good. It was so good. It was so epic. It was amazing. I have no complaints at all. They just completely knocked that out of the park. Voice acting as well was fantastic. Dude, Lupa's voice actor, paying rent. Cartethiya's voice actor, paying rent. All of the NPCs, honestly, were also amazing. Cristoforo's voice actor, paying rent. I love my evil branch. Evil branch popped off. Frolova always sounds amazing. Bullying was very funny. And yeah, voice acting was no complaints at all. So I guess that's basically it. That's basically all I have to say about the story. Again, like I said, I was just mostly glazing, but I really like the direction they're taking with the story. I love overall the creativeness of the story writing, because for me, I love, you know, story is my favorite thing. So the fact that they are trying to tell the story in such creative ways with the non-linear narrative, with the book, with all of these different storylines, we're getting to see more interpersonal relationships outside of the playable characters. I just think that the future of the story is really looking up. Somehow, for me, every patch just keeps getting better. So yeah, hopefully in the future, you know, we'll be able to see them continue this trend with the wuwa story, and yeah, really looking forward to 2.5. Well, my final rating, I guess, for 2.4, See, guys, I always do this. Whenever I'm like super impressed, I just give it like a really high rating. But I'll be completely honestly though, I really do think that for me, wuwa 2.4 deserves a 9.5. 9.5 is the highest I usually go because I don't like going to 10. But 9.5 for wuwa 2.4. They improved so many of those, you know, things that I mentioned that I wanted from the wuwa story, and I am really hopeful for the future that if they keep that up, then the wuwa story, all the things that I had issues with in the wuwa story will just be gone, and then I'll be sold. I mean, I'm already sold, but you know what I mean. So yeah, that's about it for my story review. If you guys enjoyed, please make sure to like, subscribe. I'd super appreciate it. Again, comment down below letting me know your guys' thoughts. I said I wasn't gonna yap for too long, and then I yapped for too long. So hopefully if you guys got to the end here, you thought it was interesting enough to yeah, let me know what you think below. Join the Discord server if you want to come chat, hang out, and have a good time. And apart from that, thanks so much for watching YouTube. Take care, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye bye bye.